Hi everyone, Sam here. And oh my goodness, I had such a big tech glitch this week in the sense that I have already recorded this podcast episode, but the audio got completely lost after recording and I'm starting again. So here we are. So stoked to be here with you. And we have our second ever Q&A on the Regenerative Business Podcast. Thank you so much for everyone who submitted questions. I'm stoked to be answering these for you. If you want your question answered in a future Q&A on the podcast, you can just go to thedirtyalchemy.com/QA, and that will take you to the form for you to submit your question. And you can submit it either anonymously or have your name and business associated with it, your choice. Link for that is also in the show notes. So let's jump in. First question is from Pauline, Be the Data Hero. And Pauline asks, my question is around small businesses, entrepreneurs, and data. My business is all about taking the potent power of data that I learned in the corporate world and use the power of metrics, data, and information to help small businesses work smarter. But I've noticed a large number of business owners that prefer to use their gut or not want to talk about metrics or data at all. Being in RBE, and side note for listeners, if you didn't know, that is my membership, the Regenerative Business Ecosystem. So glad you're there, Pauline. And now I know that I can point you to resources in there. But back to Pauline's writing. I know how important metrics and tracking data are to you. What's your take on getting business owners to value and use data and metrics? Thank you. So I'm going to make your question a little bit more concise. I'm interpreting it as how do you help small business owners stop avoiding data, trust metrics, and actually use them, especially when they're intuitive, overwhelmed, or resistant to the corporate feel of tracking? I mean, first of all, there's like really legitimate fears and funkiness around metrics and data. There's the fear of judgment, both self-judgment and judgment from others of I'm behind, there's a fear of failure being quantified, which I know we all know is silly, but it's kind of like we're hiding under the covers, being like, well, if I don't look at the data, then it doesn't exist, right? The bad numbers don't exist, which of course is silly, but I think most people have been guilty of this at least one time. I know I have many times. There's fear of losing creative flow. And really, numbers have historically been used as weapons, both in corporate and in school. I know so many people tell stories of an elementary school teacher in math class making them feel so small and so stupid because they couldn't understand this one thing. There's shame with, I should have figured this out by now. And data can also feel like a threat to intuition and artistry. Now, as you mentioned, and any longtime listener of the podcast will know that I think that metrics improve intuition. Intuition improves with the correct data. And it is this balance of masculine and feminine. This was one of my very first podcast episodes many years ago, and actually brought up recently on a recent podcast episode. But for businesses to easily and spaciously scale and expand and grow, there does need to be this balance of masculine and feminine. And if you don't like those words, you can think of solar and lunar, yin and yang. But Pauline, it sounds like you'd have been attracting more intuitive, spiritual, conscious, creative entrepreneurs, which is a more feminine or lunar dynamic. Metrics, systems, automations, these are all masculine things, and the feminine can be afraid of the masculine in this society, especially. There's so much toxic masculinity, and there is so many examples lived and told of masculinity controlling and overpowering and squashing femininity. So if you have rebelled and you have opened yourself up and you've freed yourself from those sorts of structures, it's really hard to bring in things that smell like the things that may have controlled you in the past. But I mean, as you know, Pauline, that masculine structure, that data and metrics, it actually can make the feminine, the creativity, the intuitive safer. It can actually give it a place to flow within. So, my invitation to you, Pauline, is to get better at education. Now, this is your marketing. And because you are so clear, it's so right in your face, the objections that people have either told you or not told you about. If you can be actually ahead of this and in your public free marketing, the value that you're giving, you're addressing this head on over and over again, that's the best way that you can help these small business owners stop avoiding data and trust metrics. There definitely is this dynamic of if you're literally sitting in front of someone in person or on Zoom, if you're telling them something directly to them about their business, it's natural for the person receiving that to get a little defensive, even if it's nothing to get defensive about. So, marketing actually gets to be this more passive, indirect way of influencing people and educating people so that their defenses don't have to come up. Like here on this podcast, if I give the advice of your copywriting sucks because you're hiding and you're not being vulnerable, that's actually pretty well received because it's not actually a direct criticism or judgment. It's just to the general public, to all of you that are listening, I can say, I'm obviously not telling you this, Pauline. Your copywriting sucks because you're not being vulnerable and you're putting on your professional mask. And that can be received versus like if I was on a Zoom call, a private Zoom call with someone and I said those exact words to them, it's going to feel like I'm attacking them. No matter how nicely or sweetly I say it, there's just a different dynamic when you're talking to someone one to one or emailing them, whatever, versus if they're hearing something more passively in a marketing context. So whether that's on your podcast or in your social media posts or your YouTube, whatever. So there's so much opportunity for you in this, Pauline. And other things that I always point back to on this topic is I love teaching people about the neutrality of numbers. Like I've just seen it over and over again where you're assessing a launch or a funnel and a client will just say, oh my God, it's failing. It was a total failure. I'm just going to start completely over. But when we actually dig into the numbers and we're like, okay, let's actually look at the sales and the conversion rates and the page views and all of that. When we actually look at that, a lot of times it's not a failure at all. It was an epic success, but because they weren't paying attention to the numbers and they're like, oh, you just needed more eyes on that page because all of the downstream numbers looked great. There's so much neutrality that can come with numbers that can take the negative emotion out of it. And it sounds like what you're talking about is more people who are not yet clients of yours. I would encourage you to track as few numbers as possible. You don't want to track everything. That helps with the overwhelm. Can we just really pay attention to the numbers that are the highest leverage? Also, you can talk about data reducing burnout. The data and the metrics actually tell you where to focus and where to cut. With the right data and metrics, you can know, well, actually, you should be spending more time on Instagram. That's where you're getting all of your sales. Or, wow, this one email sequence is doing okay, but if we had more people opening it, then it would do significantly better. You know, it's like you can actually decide where is the best use of your energy and your time. So you already know that we're on the same page as this, but really to get into this for you, it's going to be about the education. How do you create more value? How do you directly address these objections? And because I know you're an RBE, you should check out the resource within Sacred Attraction Formula, which is, it's called the 8 types of posts I use in every single launch. And there's prompts and there's examples in there. And I would just go through these 8 types and I would take all of these different directions and write posts or emails or create videos or podcasts around this, wherever your main marketing channels are, your value bank lives. And you want to step back to the symptom and the problem more often than you want to be talking directly about the solution. So your solution is data and metrics. And I'm sure you can talk about that all day long, but really to meet your people where you are, taking a step back to the symptom slash problem or the desire that they want that they don't have yet, that level of awareness versus the solution level of awareness. You want to be talking more about how to make sure your next launch is the best one yet. That would be the hook. And then your answer will be looking at the metrics or how to know exactly which social media platform is the right one for you, like a hook like that. And your answer will be something nuanced with data and metrics. So that's something that a lot of people miss is they just want to be talking about their solution and their craft all the time, which is lovely, but you have to remember to meet your people where they're at. I actually had a private call yesterday with someone who is starting an ecological restoration business. And he's super into the environment and the ethics of land management and other species, which is all lovely. I'm on the same page 100%. But when we got into who's he actually going to be offering his services to, it's like ranchers. And when we're getting clear on what the ranchers care about, it's like extending their grazing season and having more grass for their cattle to eat. So he could talk about ecological restoration all day long. But what he actually needs to talk about is what the ranchers care about, how to extend their grazing season. And of course, his modality is ecological restoration and specific techniques with that. But you got to lead with what they want. Okay, so thank you so much for your question, Pauline. And let's move on to our second one, which is from Inner Movement, Drama Therapy, and Social Theater Center. And they write, I'm wondering about ways to implement a sliding scale that is fair for people who are facing systemic violence, such as racism, while they support their communities. As a service provider to them, I want to acknowledge the impact that money has while making sure I make ends meet. We're providing offices for therapists who are not always covered by insurances. Okay, first, let's just acknowledge that if you can't make ends meet, then everyone loses. Okay. Now, I know as a healer, there's so much temptation around pricing as low as possible. But if you cannot make ends meet, if you cannot cover your costs and pay your people and pay yourself and cover all the costs of running an in-person business, then you're going to have to shut down your business and everyone loses. So I'll talk about very practical ways to think about that in a second. But first, I want to mention just some more information on sliding scale for those who are listening. Inner movement, I'm sure you already know about this just from your wording, but a really well-known one is called the green bottle method for sliding scale pricing. And this is by Alexis J. Cunningfolk of wartsandcunning.com. But it's essentially a sliding scale tiered way of pricing that takes into account financial privilege, and it prices different based on the customer's financial privilege, where the highest price is for people who can comfortably meet all their basic needs, or basic needs are food, housing, and transportation. They might have some debt, but it doesn't prohibit attainment of basic needs. They own their home or property or rent a higher end property. They own or lease a car. They're employed or do not need to work to meet their needs. They have regular access to healthcare. They have access to financial savings. They have an expendable income, where expendable might mean you're able to buy a coffee or tea at a shop, or go to the movies or a concert, buy new clothes, books, and similar items each month, etc. They can always buy new items, and they can afford an annual vacation or take time off. The middle tier are people who might stress about meeting their basic needs, but still regularly achieve them, may have some debt, but it does not prohibit attainment of basic needs. They own or lease a car, they're employed, they have access to healthcare, they might have access to financial savings, they have some expendable income, they're able to buy some new items and thrift others. They can take a vacation annually or every few years without financial burden. And then the third tier are people who frequently stress about meeting basic needs and don't always achieve them. They have debt, and it sometimes prohibits them from meeting basic needs. They rent lower end properties or have unstable housing. They don't have a car or have limited access to a car, but not always able to afford gas. They're unemployed or underemployed. They qualify for government assistance, including food stamps and healthcare, have no access to savings, have no or very limited expendable income, rarely buy new items because they can't afford them, and cannot afford a vacation or have the ability to take time off without financial burden. So a lot of people have based their sliding scale pricing off of this. And I'm assuming that the therapists that are renting offices from you do this for their clients. So you have a more unique situation in that you're not creating a sliding scale for the direct customer, the people who are getting therapy. That's the therapists are doing that, but you want to provide a sliding scale for the therapists who are doing such things, or maybe a mix of both. And when I was looking for examples of this, I couldn't find that many. The closest that I found was a green bottle membership by the National Association of Certified Professional Midwives. And they have a 5-tiered membership. And this is, of course, different, right? Because they have a very scalable offer, which is an online membership in this case, where you don't have a scalable offer. You're renting physical space. But I wanted to give this example just to get your gears turning. And you can Google this, the NACPM Green Bottle membership. But they have 5 tiers. The highest tier, which is $350 a year, is the full fee membership for those who are comfortably able to meet all their basic needs and can afford the standard membership fee. And then multiple tiers in between. And their lowest tier is 90% off, so $35 a year. And this tier is for those who frequently stress about meeting basic needs and have limited financial resources. It offers significant assistance for midwives facing financial hardship, ensuring that everyone can continue to be part of the NACPM community. So, similar wording to the Warts and Cunning's green bottle method, but their own version of it. And I think you creating your own version of it is really going to help. So, here are some of the things I would be thinking about if I were you and what I would be calculating, because I think you actually want to calculate your needs with certain assumptions so that you can have your needs met. I would be thinking about accounting for vacancy. Are you in a situation where you think all of your office space is going to be booked all the time? Or do you want to account for 10% vacancy annually or 25% vacancy annually? That's a factor I would put in just so you have a buffer. I would be calculating, if you haven't yet, how much do you need to make to cover all of your expenses for the business, to also pay you a salary and pay the people that you're employing a good salary? So what is that monthly number that covers all of that? Now, you are going to have to make your own tiers because yours is a little different. You could have the lowest tier for people who only work with sliding scale clients and who are also facing systemic violence such as racism. Is it just based on whether they're doing sliding scale? Is it just based off of whether they're facing systemic violence? Make your own 3 tiers, but you can check out that green bottle method. And then when I'm actually sitting down and calculating pricing, if I were you and I was trying to be conservative, I would probably base my pricing with the assumption that what if every single therapist that comes in needs the lowest tier? This would be different if you had a more scalable offer, but because you're an in-person business with much higher overhead, that's what I would be considering. What percent vacancy can I safely assume? And then I would probably make sure that if every single office space was for someone who fit the lowest tier pricing, could I still cover my rent? What price would that be? Now, side thought that I think is smart, but I know you're not even open yet, right? I'm recording this in December 2025, and I know that you're opening your doors to the public in January 2026. So about a month away, which is so fucking exciting, but you don't have your own data around like, what is my vacancy or how many of my therapists will fit into these different tiers. So I would be as conservative as possible when setting initial prices, because like we all know that it's so much better to receive something delightful than have something taken away from you. Like if you needed to up your prices because you didn't adequately assume the vacancy and how many of your therapists would be the lowest tier, and then you had to raise their price, that's way shittier for everyone involved. You're going to feel way worse about that than setting a higher price and people coming in and you letting them know, actually, we have much lower vacancy than we thought. We're getting fully booked with a wait list. Half of my therapists are the highest tier. So for people with the lowest tier, I'm actually able to give them a deeper break, lower their pricing. That's a much better scenario for everyone involved. But aside from that, I would be thinking about what other income streams can you create? I know that you personally do one-to-one therapy. You also have your own private practice outside of this new in-person space. But once the doors are open, once you have things rocking and rolling, the dust is settled, maybe in the second quarter or the third quarter of the year, you start thinking about what other income streams can you create? Can you have a more scalable offer? Can you do larger group workshops or group programs or digital things that feed into the in-person business and helps with that profit margin and allows you to more comfortably do lower tiers? Those are some things to think about. I know that you're in the regenerative business ecosystem, so let's keep the conversation going in there. But you're welcome to resubmit a question to these Q&As. We can keep talking about it here. But can't wait to hear how everything goes in January. I'm so excited for you. And now let's move on to our third and final question of the day. And this was submitted by Anonymous. And they say, I feel so embarrassed at how much I spend spiraling about my prices. My clients tell me I'm undercharging. Friends tell me I'm undercharging. But every time I go to raise my rates, something in me panics. How do you break the psychological ceiling around pricing when you logically know you're worth more, but your body says nope? You've probably heard me mention the regenerative business ecosystem, but what actually is it? RBE is my all-access membership for online entrepreneurs who want to build thriving, ethical, nervous system safe businesses, ones that feel as good to run as they look on paper. Inside, you'll get every single course, workshop, and template I've ever created, from copywriting alchemy and drill-worthy offers to evergreen ecosystem and your root system. Everything's organized into clear learning pathways, so you'll always know exactly what to focus on next for your season of growth. And when you join, you'll get a personal onboarding audio from me, like a private welcome ritual where I help you identify your next right steps based on where you are in your business right now. But my absolute favorite part of RBE is the live calls. Every month we meet twice. One of those is always a Q&A call with me where I answer every question you asked. You'll get what you need every time. We also move through quarterly implementation cycles, themed seasons of focus, reflection, and growth, plus access to audio drops, a private podcast, and a vibrant community where collaborations, referrals, and real friendships happen. RBE isn't another hustle container. It is a living ecosystem built on rhythm, reciprocity, and regeneration. When you join, you get to grow your wealth and impact without losing your aliveness. Members have used these tools to double their income while working fewer hours, rebuild their creativity after burnout, and finally feel grounded in their leadership again. You can join us now at thedirtyalchemy.com/RBE, and podcast listeners get 20% off their first month with code PODCAST. Your next season of ease, expansion, and impact starts here inside the regenerative business ecosystem. Join now and have your best year yet. So, I mean, what a fun problem to have. My very first question is, do you love your prices? And can you sustain your business and your life with your prices? Because if you love them and it's actually comfortably paying you, then you don't have to raise your prices just because people tell you they think that you're undercharging. You are more than welcome to keep your prices as they are if you love them and they sustain you. But I'm guessing that you're submitting this question because you do actually want to raise your prices. Often when our body is telling us something, it's either in response to a thought that we are not identifying or we're not listening to, or it's connected to a past experience that is embedded in our bodies. So on the thought side of things, I would start off with, can you even identify that voice in your head and what it's saying? Is there a voice in your head that's saying something about your pricing, about higher pricing? Or a little prompt with this would be like, who do you think you are for pricing higher? Who do you think you are? Do you think you're greedy? Do you think you're unethical? Do you think you're a bad person? What would people say about you? And let that voice fill in the blank. There really is so much power in taking voices out of our heads and putting them in front of us. So actually writing them out on a sheet of paper, that good old making the unconscious conscious. And with this, can you identify the actual fear? So does the price increase or the idea of the price increase represent feeling too much? Is it a fear of being seen as greedy? Is it a fear of disappointing clients, fear of losing community, fear of changing power dynamics? With it right in front of you, you can decide whether or not you want to continue believing these things. Also, because this is a somatic thing for you, highly recommend doing some existential kink on it, which is an amazing book by Carolyn Elliott called Existential Kink, where somatically with our bodies, can you connect with the part of yourself that does actually want this? And you can connect on both sides of this. You can connect to the side of yourself that is undercharging and staying small and like how good it feels to be constrained and not be making enough money. And then you can also connect with and feel into and find the kink of being greedy, disappointing people, having people reject you. Can you actually find that small, secret, hidden part of you that gets off on that? Okay, so if that voice in your head is associated with an actual person or group of people, reminder that you are welcome to block people, like actually block people on the internet, both haters and people you know. So if that voice in your head is, what will my college roommate think of me? Or what will my Aunt Carrie think of me? You're welcome to block those people. Not block them out of your life or go no contact with them. Just not allow them to see what you're doing on the internet. That's totally welcome. You're not unhealed or unintegrated if you go the easy route of blocking people, because I doubt your college roommate or your Aunt Carrie are your ideal clients. Okay. Another side of this, kind of going forward into this, is connecting with your future self. If you know there is a price that you want to be charging, but it feels so nope in your body right now, is there a future version of you or like a parallel timeline version of you, a next identity that does feel good about that pricing? I would go into meditation, and there's an amazing guided meditation on YouTube that I used to do almost every single week. I think the guy's name is Michael Singer. I mean, it's like he has millions of followers, so it'll be easy to find if you just search Meet Your Future Self meditation on Google, or just take a few minutes by yourself, close your eyes, and connect in with a future version of yourself that does feel really good about this next pricing. Like, really sit in, connect with them, notice what they think of this pricing. You can also notice what else they're doing in their life, how they hold themselves, what they're wearing, what they're doing. When I was earlier on in my business, when I was still like a marketing freelancer, something that really helped me with raising prices, which was so terrifying at the time, was straight up doing research. What are others charging? And this doesn't apply to everyone in every scenario, but in certain scenarios, it does apply. When I was faced with what people were charging, and wow, I'm really, really undercharging compared to all of these other things, and wow, I'm doing way more than what this hourly rate normally is, it gave me such a boost of confidence to take fast action on raising my prices, even though it felt uncomfortable. It was definitely this like, well, if they're doing it and they're not as good as what I'm doing, then like, of course I should be raising my prices. That again, that doesn't apply to every scenario, but just had to throw it in just in case. Now, with somatic stuff, doing small steps is often a wise choice. So when you're thinking about a higher price, can you step into a slightly higher price that does still feel safe? So let's say your current price is $1,000 for what you're doing, and the idea of charging $3,000 freaks you the fuck out. Take a tiny step instead of a big step. Can you close your eyes and feel in your body, okay, what if I charged $1,200 instead of $1,000? Does that still give you this nope response? Or does that actually feel good? And you can keep playing higher and lower to see what are the thresholds here. Can you only charge $50 more? Or could you actually charge $500 more? What is that threshold when you're actually sitting with your body and imagining telling a potential client how much you're charging for this thing? And you can also do little small steps into this with who you're telling. So once you are playing with a new price, say the new price out loud to the dog. Practice saying it in the mirror. Practice saying it to a friend. Write it out on paper repeatedly. Put it on your checkout page before telling anyone. Like, what are these little small ways that we can step into this that are stretching you slowly over time, or a little bit at a time? And then, of course, I have to throw in that once you settle on a new price or you're playing around with the new price, it's really good to value anchor in a different way. So look at how your branding, how your messaging might not match this next level, and what shifts you need to take in your branding and your messaging and your copy and your wording, or even how you hold yourself, how you show up online. How does it no longer match this new pricing? So thank you so much for this question, Anonymous. A lot to dig into with that. And thank you so much, everyone, for listening and being on with me for our second ever Q&A on the Regenerative Business Podcast. If you would like to submit a question to be answered with your name or anonymously, just head on over to thedirtyalchemy.com/QA. I will link to that in the show notes. And if you for sure want your question answered, come and join us in the regenerative business ecosystem. I do live Q&As every single month. You can submit a question ahead of time or show up live on the call. I've been answering every single question answered, and sometimes we're on for hours, but it's like the highlight of my month. I fucking love answering your guys' questions. We'd love to have you in there. But until next time, have a great week.